again, grade 11 students. This is the English for Academic and Professional Purposes subject. It is me, Miss Marianel Joy de la Cruz, your teacher. How are you today? Are you done answering all the activities in Lesson 1 of Module 1? I hope so, because in this video, I will be discussing Lesson 2 of the same module. The topic is about language use in academic writing. So before we start, let me read to you the learning objectives. At the end of the lesson, the learners are expected to, number 1, determine language style in academic writing, and number 2, differentiate language style used in academic texts from various disciplines. Now, are you ready to start our new lesson? Let's begin. Everybody, take a look at these pictures. The picture shows an influencer influences people to travel using social media. The influencer uses a language that appeals to viewers because her purpose is to encourage people to go to places that she visited. So her role here is that of a friend because her language is simple and in a conversational style. On the other hand, academic writing requires sophisticated use of language. Since your task as a student is to include writing assignments, exams, and reports, there is an expected quality in your use of language and structuring texts. So, what is an academic language? An academic language represents the language demand in school or academics. Academic language includes language used in textbooks, in classrooms, on tests, and in each discipline. It is different in vocabulary and structure from the everyday spoken English of social interaction. And each type of communication, both academic and social, has its purpose, and neither is superior to the other. In academic writing, you need to be careful when writing sentences, paragraphs, vocabulary, tone, and style. To do this, you need to remember there are 3 important features of language use in academic writing that you need to know about. The first one is formality, second is objectivity, and the third is technical. The first feature of language use in academic writing is formality. Formality reflects your dignified stance in your writing as a member of the academic community. When you mean dignified, it means that it is a composed of serious manner that is worthy of respect. So, this means that since your audience is a fellow member of academic community, the language you use requires precision to make a legitimate piece of academic writing. Formality or formal avoids casual or conversational, such as contractions and informal vocabulary. Here are some of the examples to achieve formality. Number 1, choosing expanded modal forms over contractive forms, such as using cannot instead of can't, do not instead of don't. Number 2, choosing one verb form over two verbs, such as damage instead of mess up. Number 3, choosing expanded terms over abbreviated equivalents, such as soon as possible instead of ASAP. And number 4, avoiding colloquial trite or idiomatic expression, such as kind of like or as a matter of fact. The second important feature of the language used in academic writing is objectivity. In objectivity, academic writing requires special knowledge, and the language is more complex language and objectivity. This means that the writing must be impersonal and maintain a certain level of social distance. Objectivity or objective avoids personal or direct reference to people or feelings. Objectivity can be achieved in few ways. Number 1, you need to avoid using personal pronouns such as you, I, and we. So for example, if your sentence is like this, you need to conduct the experiment. So instead of you, change it and revise it. Like this, the researchers need to conduct the experiment. So you change you to the researchers. Another way to achieve objectivity is avoiding rhetorical questions. Rhetorical question marks as closeness with the reader and seek his or her attention. So instead of a question, make it a statement. So if this is your question, how can this problem be solved? So improve it into this version. Certain measure must be discovered to solve the problem. So you change question into a statement. Another way to achieve objectivity is by avoiding emotive language that shows bias that lessens objectivity. Emotive language means using personal feelings or emotion when writing. So here's an example. The investigators were very shocked to see the outcome of the test. The first sentence is biased, and it uses emotion to express an idea. So, to improvise it, do it this way. The investigator did not expect the result. In this sentence, it shows social distance from the reader. Now, the third feature of language use in academic writing is technicality. Technicality or technical use vocabulary or terms specific to the area of discipline. This means that when writing an academic text, the terminology used should be based on the area of specialization. So if your area of specialization is science, some of the terminology used are like biology or zoology. For mathematics, they use terms like sum or algebra. While the music, they use terms like notes or keys. And for the English, they use terminology like language or paragraph. Aside from those three, there are two other important features of language use in academic writing. The first is explicitness, and the second is caution. The explicitness in academic writing demands the use of signposts that allows reader to trace the relationship in the parts of a study. When you're talking about signposts, it means that a verbal statement used to orientate or introduce the audience inside your speech or presentation, or it shows them where you are going. So, if you write an essay and if you intend to show a change in your line of argument, make it clear by using the transitional word however. So here is an example of using however. It is apparent that the government hopes to provide assistance to the poor. However, giving dolly outs to the poorest of the poorest does not work in the long term. So you show change in your line of argument using however. These phrases are also useful in making idea explicit, like using this is due to or this result in. For example, the word this is due to. A number of Meralco consumers trooped to the city hall to claim the 500 peso cash incentive. This is due to the Supreme Court ruling that overcharges must be returned to the end user whose electric consumptions of the April-May period were below 100 kilowatt per hour. Here's an example for this result in. With the Supreme Court ordering the Meralco to return overcharges to the end users, government offices have been tapped to operate as claim centers. This results in number of Meralco consumers trooping to the city hall to claim the 500 peso cash incentive. When two ideas seem the same, express each one clearly. You can use the transitional word similarly or related to. So here's an example. The study showed that 80% of the 200 participants involved in the study were dissatisfied with the operation of Meralco. Similarly, the idea revealed that the majority of the participants were not aware of the charges imposed on them by the Meralco. So the word similarly means two ideas seem the same. So if you intend to give an extra information in your sentence, make it clear by using transitional word in addition. For example, Meralco has been using as a business conglomerate involving stakeholders and independent power producers or IPP. In addition, Meralco owns major IPPs operating the region. So you give an extra information and you use in addition. And last is if you're giving examples. Do it so explicitly by writing, for example. So here is a sentence example. The Meralco issue has led to dispute between opposition and administration senators. For example, those who have been labeled as against the president consider the issue as the administration way of avoiding the NBN ZTE scandal. So you add by giving examples. Another important feature of language use in academic writing is caution. In academic writing, it requires care since language is built from proven theories and concepts. Therefore, caution is needed to avoid sweeping generalization or hasty generalization. So here's an example of sweeping generalization or hasty generalization. Government officials are corrupt. This statement is not completely true, and the rhetorical impact of the statement is misleading. So in order to improve this statement, you need to use devices like modal verbs, adverbs, or verbs. You can choose any of those three. For example, try to improvise the sentence like this, using modal verbs. Some government officials may be corrupt. So you use modal verb maybe. This one is for using adverbs. Corruption is commonly linked to some key government officials. So the adverb is commonly. Now what about the verb? Here's an example. A number of government officials tend to be linked with cases of corruptions. So linked is an example of a verb. So below are some of the forms that you may use in observing caution in writing. Here are some few examples of modal verbs, adverb of frequency, and some of the verbs. So for modal verbs, you use will, must, would, may, can, might, could. For example, the observations of students' use of social networking sites may lead to the different behaviors that manifest in real-life communications. Now let's proceed to the adverb of frequency. Here are some of the examples. Often, sometimes, usually. So here is a sentence. The essay that gives mark were usually high. Next is the verb. When you use tends, suggest, appears, or appears to be, think, believe, doubt, or indicate. For example, the findings of the survey suggests that students who use social networking in their academic work tend to be more updated on recent developments in their respective subjects. So the suggest is the verb. You need to remember that in academic writing, caution needs to be observed at all times, especially when you are writing your own research paper. So here are the parts that needed to be observed with caution. First is when a hypothesis needs to be tested. If you want to test the theory if it is true or not. Number two, when drawing conclusion or prediction from your findings that may generalize certain matters or may not be conclusive. This will affect the reliability and the validity of result. And number 3, referencing other work to build your own paper. If you do not cite the source and write the references, you are committing academic dishonesty or plagiarism that may lead to expulsion or can be put in jail. So therefore, you need to be cautious when writing your sentences. Since academic writing draws previous writing done related to your topic, in the case of writing research writing, it is important that creating knowledge is expressed through means that do not lead to sweeping generalization or hasty generalization that may directly attack to the writer's point of view. So do not make a direct attack to the point of view of the writers. For examples, if your result shows something different from the other's idea, there are some possible ways in writing these points, like this first and the second sentence. For example, the result contradicts Mayer's finding, and the results appear to be different from Mayer's findings. These two sentences essentially mean the same thing. However, in sentence 1, it expresses an explicit difference between your findings and Mayer's. This may be interpreted by the readers as to attempt to highlight your findings as superior compared to Mayer. On the other hand, the sentence 2 shows that you are distancing yourself from your work, basing conclusion of what you observe and comparing it to the previous work done by the other researcher, relating to your contribution to other ideas in discipline. So there is a social distancing in the second sentence. So students, you need always to remember that in academic writing, since you are part of the community, you express your ideas with openness and striking balance between concise and caution. So that's it for today. Thank you everyone for listening. Do you have any question for me? Kindly send your queries in our group chat. Let me end this video with a quote. We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting our experience. According to John Dewey. This is Teacher Marinel signing off.